Okay, awesome. That's two. All right. Beautiful. This is the NYC Basement Podcast, brought to you by Long Step Publishing. I'm your host, Shelley Nicole. Tonight, I am excited to welcome to the show JP Howard. And JP Howard is a Cave Canem graduate fellow. She is the author of Say Mirror, a debut poetry collection published by the Operating System, and a chaplet, Bury Your Love Poems Here. Say Mirror was a 2016 Lambda Literary Award finalist in the lesbian poetry category. JP is a 2019-2020 featured author in Lambda Literacy's LGBTQ Writers in Schools program. JP is a Pushcart Prize nominee and was a finalist for Split the Rock's 2017 Freedom Plow Award for Poetry and Activism. JP is featured in the 2017 Lesbian Poet Trading Card Series from Headmistress Press and was selected as a 2016 Judith Markowitz Emerging Writers Award winner from Lambda Literary Foundation. JP curates and nurtures Women's Writers in Bloom Poetry Salon, a forum offering all writers, but especially women at all levels, a monthly venue to come together in a positive and supportive space. The Salon has been featured in Literary Hub, Poets and Writers Magazine, and on CUNY's TV cable program, Study with the Best. JP's Women's Writers in Bloom Poetry Salon has partnered with PEN America, the Reading Series New York, and Continuing and Professional Studies of the City College of New York for an interactive, innovative poetry workshop from page to stage. Everyone has a story to tell. What's yours? JP was one of Velvet Park Magazine's official 25 Queer Women of 2016, and she was selected as one of Go Magazine's 2016 100 Women We Love. Welcome to the podcast, JP Howard.
Thank you. Fantastic to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited. Sorry you had to read that long bio.
Okay. You know, it's so funny. I really like reading people's bios.
Okay.
I think because I think it's important for us to celebrate all the things, you know.
Absolutely.
And I know that your bio was even longer. I mean,
Yes.
tell people like JP has done some things. Like let's
Right.
not
That's right.
and it's really beautiful. And it's I was like, okay, let's see what actually can I cut here. But because it was really amazing. So
Thank you.
welcome to the
Thank
show.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So there's so much. I read your book,
You
so
did?
I
Okay.
did.
Awesome.
Yes, I read your book.
Okay.
And
You're like, I did my homework. I did my work. I hear
I
that.
did. And it was interesting because it brought up a lot of things for me. One thing I didn't think I was going to start here, but I am going to start here. Was
Okay.
the piece about your mom. I'm trying to let me see if I can find it here. But when you were
Oh, for
talking about
sure.
the fact that when she had you, she had a C-section, and
That's right.
it was just
Absolutely.
you and her,
That's
and
right.
that
She's a
is
single mom. I was only child. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
and that's kind of like my story,
Oh, wow.
which
Okay. That's deep.
which really resonated, and I was just like, wow,
Yes.
it was not exactly the same, but definitely the two of us,
Yes.
definitely
Yes.
yeah, and I just we're born around the same time. So I just
Hmm.
thought that that was
Hmm.
really interesting as well. So tell me, I mean, was
Yeah.
that something, I guess growing up and you brought in your grandmother and like her presence in that.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about
Yes. A
that.
big presence.
Yeah. Because my
Yes. Very
grandmother
much
was a big
these strong.
presence too.
So cool. So cool. So we have a lot in common. Yeah. Very much this strong matriarchal aspect, I would say, to my family.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with my grandmother, who had migrated from the South, from Florida, up to Sugar Hill, Harlem, which is where I grew up, and which they lived for many, many decades. So that was really substantial part of who I was too, right? To kind of know this history of the South, but to be growing up north,
Mm-hmm.
also to understand kind of what they went through, right?
Right.
Because my grandmother migrated here when they were still going through, Jim Crow and so many things that she had to, sort of overcome. And then my mom was this very big personality, a Leo. I'm a Leo also, but she was a true Leo, this like big diva. And she also, before I was born, she had been a famous African-American model in Harlem. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like being born into this history or this herstory to learn so much about, learn so much about her. But also,
Mm-hmm.
that informed our relationship too, this kind of big personality and me being an only child. But they both
Right.
both were big, both were hugely influential, I would say, in my life, both my mom and
Mm-hmm.
my grandma, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree for myself as well.
Yes, yes, you can
So,
relate. You can
yeah,
relate.
I
Yes,
can
I think
totally
especially being an
relate.
only child, many times that
Yeah,
really sort of, those are the folks that are
absolutely.
closer to us. If it's your mom or your grandmom or whoever's around you, yeah,
Absolutely.
those adults kind of have significant, kind of impact in your life,
Yes.
the good and the
And I'm just,
bad, right? The good and the bad. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
absolutely. I'm going to back up just for the podcast listeners, just so that they know that
Yes.
your book is really centered around you and your mother's relationship, and at least that's what it felt to me. And say mirror. So tell me a little bit about that book title and the piece that the companion piece that goes along with it.
Absolutely, sure. Say Mirror is the title. And a lot of the book sort of talks about, like I said, almost growing up in the shadow of this person who was very much, she was, like I said, she had been a model before I was born. So a lot of who she was about sort of, how you looked and kind of looking in the mirror. And I was very shy as a child, even though she is the one who encouraged me to be a poet, but I was very shy. So also part of the title, I think, comes from finally getting a chance to say, to speak, to say kind of what my story is, right? To be able to
Mm,
tell it through this adult lens, looking back on, what I experienced as a child, right? And kind of
right.
also making peace with whatever the different things that she kind of, went through. Because the thing that I wanted to come through in this book is that she loved me deeply, even though she struggled. She had her own struggles. She did struggle with depression and she did struggle with alcoholism for a while. But always I knew that, there was this great love for me, right? Um,
Right.
so the title comes from that, kind of being surrounded by this diva and all these photos. So, in this, kind of mirror, always looking, reflecting back. And the say part is really kind of like, finding my voice, maybe
Mm,
letting her voice come through a little bit in the book as well, but
mm,
kind of finally sort of stepping out of that shadow and speaking. Yeah, so I
right.
think that's part of where it comes from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just when I guess you also later in the book, we're talking about, and we hear this a lot in the Black community about airing of our dirty laundry. So when you decided
Yes,
to
yes.
put this piece together, one, was your mother still alive, or is she still alive? Let me maybe that's the
Hmm.
question. Maybe that's
Hmm.
number one. Is your mother still alive, and
Okay,
was she still alive when
okay.
you put this piece
She
together?
She passed away, maybe it's been about almost 5 years. This will be 5 years, but she was alive when the book came out.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing was when she actually, she did like the book. Loved that she was on the cover. Her photo's on the cover, this very glamorous photo of her when
Yeah.
when she models. So it was a very diva Leo type response to have. But yes, at the time that it first came out, I was happy that she was able to see it. And of course, we had some discussions about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I know it was your first question. You said, right? Yes, yeah. So she was alive when it came out, and the thing is, actually, she passed away maybe not that long after it came out, and so my editor was wonderful. So the edition that you have is probably the second
Yeah.
expanded edition, and that was really beautiful because it has sort of it allows me to kind of talk about her as well. It was like a little special introduction.
Right, right,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, I know when I was reading I think it's the conversation in the back of the book, and it was talking about
Yes, that's right. With my
writing,
editor.
right, and writing that family secret poem,
Yes,
and
yes,
how, just I guess a little bit about that because I think that so many artists, no matter what your genre is, can struggle with like how much am I supposed to share, and so yeah, talk
yes,
about
yes. And
that piece.
yeah, and I talk about that a lot in my workshops as well. I give a lot of workshops talking about kind of writing our story, using
Mm,
family archives like I used in this book, because this book has photos. And so that
right.
poem that I talked about writing was about my mom's attempted suicide. And I wrote that poem, actually. I always remember this. I was at Cave Canem, a summer fellow. I was a fellow there. This was one of the summers, this is a 3-year commitment. And Toy Derricotte, who's this amazing poet and also an instructor, told us, I always remember this, write that difficult poem. Write a poem that basically is this family secret that you've never talked about. And I really hadn't talked about it because it was a family secret, you know?
Right.
And so then to write that poem, and it was a very strong reaction. Folks were so supportive. Ed Roberson was actually the instructor who ended up giving feedback on it. Really, you know, positive feedback. People in the class actually cried because they were so moved by it, you know. But then when it came time, and this is way before the book, so then when the book got accepted for publication, I was like, wait a minute, this poem is in there. You know, like I said, my mom is alive, and my family is still around. And, you know, how are folks gonna feel about that? Because when I was a teenager and I brought it up, my mother by that point was in recovery and had stopped drinking, but I did bring it up, remember, to my grandmother, and she was like, how dare you talk about that? You know, your mother is okay now. You know, she survived, and we don't not air our dirty laundry in this family. So it never got discussed after that, you know, for many, many years, really for decades, right? And so here I am writing this poem about it. And so I really did struggle with that, you know, but ultimately I think what won out was when I talked to my editor, she's like, no, I think this is important. You never know how many people this might resonate with. Maybe not the same exact story, but, you know, maybe a parent struggling with depression, maybe a reader struggling with depression. And that's really has been my truth after that, is that so many people have come up to me and that it's resonated with them for various reasons, whether it be their own selves or people in their family. And a lot of times, you know, especially in, you know, Black households, we don't always talk about mental health issues. So I think that I'm happy that I was able to include it and that it leads to discussion, you know, because I get a chance when I go now to give, you know, discussions and go to the workshops to talk about that, to talk about it's okay to talk about our secrets.
Right, right. And it's probably better for us so that we can have our own healing. Because like you said, this was a book to really give you voice, as you had been, you know, in some ways possibly living in the shadow of your mom diva-ness. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
So
that's right. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So it's really been, I guess, in some ways healing, you know, to be able to write about it, to be able to talk about it, to be able to kind of, you know, make peace, right? We ultimately made peace when she was alive. And so that was sort of a beautiful gift. And maybe being able to write about it was also another level of, you know, me making peace as well.
Right.
So it's kind of served, I didn't know that, but I feel like it served all these multiple purposes that I had no idea when I wrote it those, you know, years ago in that workshop, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I know, I mean, or reading, I should say, the book, was there a time, I mean, obviously when you're a child, and I think that's what the piece Diva Doll is about, is kind of like your mom
Yes.
had the opportunity to dress you and do,
yes, exactly.
you know, and take you to the places. But was there a moment, I guess, or when was the moment for you when you realized like, oh, this sort of, you know, diva life is not mine, you know, it's really hers. And how was that inside of that in your relationship and sort of finding yourself?
Yes, I think probably more of it when I was a teenager. I mean, I kind of knew it beforehand, but, you know, I didn't really speak it until I was a teenager. And I always remember I tell this story sometimes. It was the two of us only, of course. And definitely I was sort of that only child in the sense that I could get spoiled. She would give me tons of gifts. I remember one year she gave me, I want to say like, almost embarrassed to say it, but it was like 15 shirts in every color. And they had ruffles, I think they had sequins. And that was not, you know, something that I would, you know, be wearing. And I think I just kind of like, you know, blurted out to her, this is ridiculous, you know. It was sort of the first time I really spoke up, this is ridiculous, you know, I'm not you, you know, I can't be you, you can't want me to be you. And so that was kind of the beginning of being able to sort of say, this is who I am, right? This is not who I am, right?
Right.
But to let her know that. And ultimately, you know, she came to accept it. But initially, she was so hurt by that when I told her that, you know. But sometimes we just have to sort of speak up and speak our truth. And then, you know, as I got into college, got a chance to really sort of, you know, kind of be myself, explore whatever that meant, you know. Then I was able to, even though it's interesting, because I would say I certainly do identify as, you know, I'm a lesbian, but I definitely identify as femme, you know.
Right.
And certainly do sometimes like that kind of glamorous diva part. But, you know, I feel like I always tell people we have all these different parts inside of ourselves, right? And so maybe for me, it was learning to embrace all of those parts, but not feel like I had to kind of go that route.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt like I guess the full circle of it as you in the piece, praise poem for our mamas. And, you know, I think that's an important thing. And I was wondering, was that a space that you came to when you became a mother? Was it something that you came to understand, you know, before, you know, when did that piece sort of come, into being?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you. I think definitely once I became a mom, it really helped to kind of bring all those different perspectives together. It gave me really a newfound respect for my mom, right? You know, for the struggles that we may go through as parents. And we were kids, we may not understand that, you know, as much, right?
Yeah.
And so that poem, Praise Poem for Mamas, kind of is praise all those mamas, right? Praise the mamas who nurture, praise the mamas who maybe don't give you that hug, the mamas who don't,
Right.
aren't the like, come sit on my lap, baby mamas, right? Um, praise the people in our lives who are like mamas, right? Like that's a big important part for those people who may not have any relationship. I have lots of friends, beautiful friends, but for whatever reason, they do not have relationships with their mother, mothers who are
Right.
still alive, but are no longer
Right.
part of their lives, or who are very, disconnected. And so I think about people like that. And I'm like, you know what? Praise the people in your life who are like mamas, who are nurturing,
Mhm.
who are giving, right? And that
Mhm.
can sometimes be maybe even more important than some folks' mamas in their lives. And that's
Absolutely.
another thing I think becoming a mother has made me realize, I mean, I love being a mom. It's something that, I always wanted to do. So in that sense, I feel like I'm fortunate. There's been a really positive experience. But I know for everybody it's not. And I try to acknowledge that when I talk about those relationships.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and this is sort of more of I guess a poetry style question.
Okay, cool. All right. We like those questions too. We like those.
I was reading. Oh, that's the poem. It was the subtext poem, and it says subtext a zuhitsu.
Zui Hitsu, yes,
Zuhitsu. And I was
yes.
like, okay, I had not known what that was. And then there were also two other pieces that are ghazal.
Ghazal, yes, those are poems
Yes.
that I love, especially the Ghazal. The Zui Hitsu is something that one of my friends, Cheryl Boyce Taylor, is really fantastic,
Yes.
fantastic poet.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
is, really amazing at that. So, I can never ever, be at her level, but I'm glad I have at least one in the book. But the Ghazal is a form that I also love, an old Middle Eastern form, and sort of,
Okay.
kind of maybe um, trying it in my own way. It's not necessarily strict to the initial form, but it definitely borrows from a lot of the repetition. There's a repetition in that form, and I like it. I like that kind of a poem. It allows you to kind of talk about sometimes difficult themes, talk about longing. So that I like poems that have a form, because sometimes maybe they're shorter and allows you to deal with sort of difficult topics, because you have to kind of almost stick to this form, right? But you can
Right.
still explore so many difficult topics. Whereas, in a long, prose poem, sometimes you kind of pull it, you're telling it all out there. So it's almost more difficult in some ways to kind of have to make it concise, but it can be really powerful. I feel like it was done right, some of those poems.
Right. So the
But
ghazal, just for folks who aren't really familiar with the form, because you were saying
yeah,
it's short, you were saying it's sort,
yeah. I
so
mean, it doesn't. I mean, it can be. I think it has to be at least five stanzas. It could be long. Some people can make it, as long as they want,
got it.
really. But
Okay.
there is a repetition. There's a refrain at the end of each line that gets repeated. And the second stanza,
Mhm.
it's couplets. So there's, two lines. So that
Okay.
second phrase gets repeated pretty much in all the stanzas. At in the end of the poem, you bring in yourself. So it doesn't have to be your name. It could be a nickname for yourself. It could be,
Mm-hmm.
something that the poet knows represents himself. So I like that, because it really brings you, kind of connects you to that poem in some way,
Yeah,
at the end.
absolutely.
Traditionally, a lot of those poems are poems of longing, poems of loss. So it's a good way to kind of deal with, those topics, or not. You don't have to, but
Hmm.
traditionally, that's, I feel like it works for some of those topics really, really well. Yeah.
Right. And the zuhitsu,
Yes.
I'm
And
assuming it's Japanese.
yes,
Okay.
Japanese form, and I believe it means like running brush. So the idea is almost
Ah.
if you were painting and the brush was going all over the page, right? So the
Mm.
Zuihitsu is really cool. Like I said, I'm not, an expert like Cheryl Boyce Taylor, but basically you can use, it's a great form because you can use so many different things. You can use pieces of your diary, you can use
Mm.
other people's poems, you can use so many different things you can use. And that's really kind
Okay.
of the wonderful thing about that. You can use recipes. And so
Oh,
when I teach,
okay.
sometimes when I teach workshops, I like to use that because I love to use archival material. So I'm telling people,
Uh-huh.
bring in whatever you have, bring in your photos, bring in your family photos, bring in your
Right.
memorabilia. You can use all that.
Right.
So
Oh, that's
yeah, so it's
cool.
kind of a, running brush.
So now I'm gonna have to go back and check out Char Boyce. I haven't
That's
seen,
right.
I know her. I know
Yes.
she's
Yes.
fabulous.
And the person who's most famous for is Kamiko Han. So if you definitely
Okay.
get her books on that. And then
Hmm.
Cheryl Boyce would also be as well. Some really wonderful Zuliasus. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So tell us about Women Writers in Bloom, because that is, something that you've been doing for a while. Tell me how that
Yes.
got started and now how it has really bloomed. Like you
It
really,
really
it's
has.
done
Yeah,
a whole
yeah.
lot of things. So tell us
That's
about that.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's Women Writers in Bloom Poetry Salon. And in this year, which is 2020, the salon turned 9 years old. Um,
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you so much during a pandemic, but we've continued. So it's actually amazing. It's actually almost sort of grown in terms of the ability now to go online and to reach so many more people. But
Mm-hmm.
really, it came from my desire to. What happens is I went to school. Um, After many years of not going to school for poetry, I went back to school to get my MFA. So this
Mm-hmm.
was maybe in like 2009 I got that degree, and I missed a few years after that. I missed kind of that community, being able to write regularly with people. And so I started the salon in 2011, and that was really the idea, just to meet informally with folks to be able to kind of write. um, and then started out, I would say maybe like a handful of folks in an apartment. uh, and then decided to bring other people in to each month. It's been a monthly salon this whole entire time, to bring in featured poets, to do workshops, to do writing, to have this great potluck so people bring their own food. And then we also have an open mic so everybody can share. So it's really been beautiful to kind of watch it grow, to
Mm-hmm.
watch the people who come to the salon grow, because it's really become this like really supportive environment and community. And it is mainly women. It's open to everyone. We have a large LGBT, Black, Indigenous, people of color that are part of the salon. And of course, we have lots of allies as well. So I love that it's really diverse, people of all ages. So we have, salon members who are as young as, 20 or even younger. And then we have some members who are in their 80s, and
Right.
all in between, and
Right.
people from all kind of backgrounds, people who may have MFAs, PhDs, and people who, maybe may not, who
Right.
may have, limited schooling. But the thing is, they all love writing poetry, listening to poetry, reading poetry. And it's a great way to celebrate small presses, independent presses,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times that's who publishes poets, right? Are those small
Right.
independent presses. And many times the people that I feature are often, poets, women poets of color, a lot of times LGBT, lesbian identified, or queer poets. So it's also a great way to maybe focus or shine some light on people who don't always get the attention that I think they deserve, and that could
Right.
be poets who've been around for a while, but who aren't getting what I think is, the shine they deserve. Or it could be,
Right.
emerging poet of any age. When I think of emerging, it doesn't have to be necessarily age related. It's just emerging that maybe their first book came out at whatever age, it could be in their 20s, it could be in their 50s, but
Right.
their first
Right.
book came out. We want to celebrate them, you know.
Right.
Um, and so it's really been beautiful. I miss meeting in person, because since the pandemic we have moved online, but it's flourished. Even I've been able to get features from all around the world now. So I've had two features from South
Mm-hmm.
Africa. I have a
Mm.
London-based feature coming up now. So that's kind of amazing that it's allowed me to bring in people who, well, I certainly, I make sure that there's an honorarium, but I wouldn't be able to fly those people in. So now, because now that we meet online, during this point in time, that allows me to kind of reach out to more people, and people from all over can attend who wanted to attend before but couldn't, because it was always in New York.
Right, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's been such
yeah,
an interesting thing about this pandemic, like you're not
yes,
the only person that I've spoken to, who has been like, wow, I've been able to touch and be, connected with people that would have never been able to happen before. Because like you said, would you have had
yes,
necessarily the funds to fly somebody from South Africa, to fly somebody from London? So
right,
it's like a
exactly.
strange blessing in a way,
Yes,
to
in a
be
way.
able to be able to connect with people in this way. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's really, really true. And I think I mentioned that I grew up in Harlem, so a big
Hmm.
part of the in-person salon. So this summer was really hard, because this would have been the ninth year, but for the last 8 years, I always had a barbecue salons at least twice during the summer in Sugar Hill in
Right.
Harlem, on the block I grew up
Right.
on. But we had great pictures and great memories, and it will happen again one day. So
Yes.
that was a little tough to kind of adapt to that.
Yeah. Yeah. You are not alone.
That's right. Absolutely. Exactly. Exactly. We're all going through it together. So then that it helps that we have community to kind of support us and say, you know what, we're going to be all right. We're going to
Yeah.
still write, right? We're going to still come together
Right.
in the ways that we can, and it shows how
Absolutely.
creative people can be, right? That we've thought of other ways to connect.
Yes, absolutely. So have the many of the women, or some of the women I should say, who have come through the Salon maybe didn't think that they would necessarily publish, but then have gone on to publish. And
Absolutely. That's
yeah,
been such a big blessing. Totally. Yes. The people who came, we have one salon member who was so shy. I always remember she would like pick up her phone and read the poem for the open mic.
yeah.
And now she's got her MFA. She's working towards her PhD. She, regularly speaks, in front of huge groups. That's just one example. Lots of them have submitted poems, maybe for the first time, to actually get published, and that's a really big deal. Folks who might have been really shy about it. The great thing about coming together in community is that people sort of support each other. So we share a big part of the salon, and I, have it on Facebook, and I created a group during the pandemic, so that we now have a Facebook group as well, is that we share resources. I mean, I've always shared resources, but now we all come together and share, and that's been a really important part. But absolutely, a lot of people who, didn't think they could get published have published and have performed, or have gone back to school to, get their MFA. So many, great things have new books coming out. And we always try to celebrate, the members when it happens, to kind of have some kind of celebration, for them. So it's really beautiful,
Yeah.
it really is, to watch people, sort of blossom. Literally, I always compare it to a garden. I'm not good at gardening, but I'm great at curating.
Yeah, it's always wonderful when you can create a space for like open, open sharing, but also open critique, where people are like not, I guess,
Yes.
so
Right.
touchy feely, but really just open to receive, and to be able to take it and then go home and improve and better themselves, and understand that
That's
like
right.
whatever
That's
feedback
right.
they're getting is really about making you better, not about tearing you down. It's really about building you up. It's like, this is beautiful,
right.
and it can be
That's
even
right.
more beautiful if you
It can be more
did
beautiful.
this.
Absolutely. Yes. Constructive criticism absolutely is everything.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And I feel like that environment is it's a big environment for that. It's really,
Yeah.
kind of, nurturing, but you don't always have to hear good things. You can hear things that are helpful, right?
Yes.
Yes. Like, how could this be a better poem? How could this be a better piece? Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, that's good. I hope everybody, I hope, and if anybody's out there who's like, you know what, I really want to know about this, I really want to write, check that out, because
Yes.
I think it's so
Yes.
important to have those spaces. I feel like I don't see them so much, so I'm glad to hear about that from you
Yes.
here.
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's it's a lot. It's definitely a labor of love. Anybody who
Yeah.
curates those kind of spaces will tell you that. But
Hmm.
it's also beautiful to watch it, blossom. And I definitely thank my family, who's been really supportive, because it's a lot. Once one, it pretty much takes up the whole day. The
Yeah.
in-person ones, out of a month, to kind of commit to doing that, to being with community. So I
Right.
really appreciate, sort of my wife and my sons kind of supporting me in that.
Absolutely. So circling back to you, I know
Yes.
you this book came out in 2016. Are you working on another book or something
Yes.
else? Maybe not poetry, but maybe something else. Or what are you doing? Let me let you tell me.
Yes. No, that's what yes. Working on, I've decided I think I have enough for two manuscripts, but there's one that I'm definitely working on now, trying to work on the edits for that, so I can hopefully find a publisher for the new work. I would say a lot of very political work is in it. I have a whole entire almost manuscript full of poems. I write a lot of poems because I have two sons, and sort of raising Black boys, Black men in America. I have a lot of poems about that. My fears for them, also celebrating them, but definitely a lot of kind of what it means to raise a young Black man in America. So I have a lot of poems on that. A lot of political poems that are gonna be in this new collection. So sort of excited about that. Excited about kind of the editing process and kind of pulling it all together. I've been working for a while, but it really sort of hasn't gotten as far as it will go on a memoir. But that's definitely something that's kind of in the works. I'm gonna have to find some more time to devote to that. But that is, we'll put it in. I like to say, put those ideas out into the universe. I'm gonna put that into the universe.
Absolutely.
and see that happening, one day. But definitely, yeah, the new collection is the next thing for me to focus on, and getting the edits to try to get it to an editor. I have some folks I know that are interested in seeing it. Right? Definitely know I need to edit a little bit more, but I'm excited about it. Excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. And as you talk about your sons in this moment,
Yes.
we are in quite the moment. I mean,
We are,
I feel like, I'm just gonna say perfect storm as Laura just hit hit the
Yeah,
Gulf
that's
Coast.
right. That's right. Absolutely, absolutely.
But I do feel like we are in a huge moment of change, and as you talk about the celebration and the fear sometimes around having black
Yes,
sons, and but
yes.
how do you feel in this moment? Because there is like this, like I said, you can feel a shift, but then folks that have wanted or had things their way for a long time, the dinosaur doesn't die easily.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. I mean, I try to stay hopeful, especially because, I am, raising these sons, right? So we try
Yeah,
to stay hopeful. But
absolutely.
it can be difficult some days, right? It can be a challenge, I mean, I think it's so important to speak out, and I would say my whole family is pretty like much activist. So I think that helps too, to know that, we do have a voice, maybe not
Hmm.
everybody's listening, but a lot of people are listening, right? And that's really important.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that I feel that helps to know that we can raise our voices, and in whatever ways, right? It could be, for some people it might mean marching, right? For some other people it might be, writing political poems. There's so many different ways that we can kind of lend our voice to the movement, for
Absolutely.
change that we need.
Hmm.
So, sort of proud to be a part of that, and proud to be kind of raising these two amazing sons who in their own way are part of that, and
Absolutely.
all the youth that are involved, right? That's
Yeah.
something that I think about, right? Because we've seen so many people, right, particularly after George Floyd's murder, get out there and really march. Lots of young folks who did not
Yeah.
have never historically hadn't done it before. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
really important, and I hope that continues, right? Hope that we keep keep our voices raised and keep making sure that we advocate for change.
Absolutely. I do personally feel like we are going to continue. This is a continued forward movement, and I feel like every time
Yes.
people start to think it's getting silent, something
Yes.
happens. Sadly, but
Sadly, right.
it,
That
it
makes it right. Right.
that's like, nope, we
Yes.
can't we can't go home
We
yet.
can't. That's right. We can't stay quiet. That's right. That's right. Yes, we gotta keep marching. Feet might be hurting, but we gotta still get out there and do it.
And do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
on a
Yes.
on a on a high note, to close, who are some of your poets that really influenced you and even to this day still influence you? Or who do you still read, and who do you still go
Yes.
back to? Who are your people
Yes.
that still fill you up?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Well, I could never ever do like a discussion without talking about Pat Parker. And for
Mm,
folks who don't know, a famous Black lesbian poet. And I think she died in the maybe the 1980s. I don't know the exact year that she passed away, maybe late 80s. But really, I never got to meet her, but I discovered her poetry really early on,
mm,
when I was in college. So maybe I was about 18 or so. And she wrote about being a Black woman, a feminist, an activist, a lesbian. She was a mother. All those things. And even though I was only 18, it really, really resonated with me.
mm.
And so she's definitely somebody who I still even go back to even now. And fortunately, the collected works of hers was published not that long ago. So I'm glad that people have access to it, because a lot of her poems had been out of print before that.
Mhm.
Audre Lorde, of
Mhm.
course, is still a poet who definitely influenced me as well around that same time. A poet who I happen to call my friend, but who I also read at that time, is Cheryl Clark, who's still out there writing and really a powerful work. And I'm actually in a writing group with her. So that's kind of amazing how it comes sort of full circle, to
Right.
like discover
Yeah.
her work when I was 18, and then to like get to now, to write with her. But also I think, lots of sort of contemporary poets too, poets who I get to call friends, whose work I really love. Ty Freedom Ford, who's an
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
yes, poet. Our Erica Doyle, Rosamund King. So these are poets who I
Mhm.
would say a lot of them may be contemporary poets, either a little bit younger or sometimes, maybe in a 10, 15-year age range,
Mhm.
but whose work really, speaks to me, and whose work is important, yeah.
Absolutely.
So those are
Yeah.
just some of the many, and could go on and on, but
You picked some good ones. I know
yes,
Ty, I
yes,
know our
that's right.
Erica, some
Yes,
they're
yes,
good
we
ones.
know. That's right. Some good ones, some good ones. That's right. And I also want to mention, she's no longer with us, but Monica A. Hand, who was a friend of mine,
Mm,
and a wonderful poet. And she passed away suddenly. It's been a few years now, but her poetry is still out there and still really powerful. So, still try to always make sure we, honor our ancestor poets.
absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
So I want to thank you before we close. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything that's like burning that you were like, you know what, I really wanted to talk about this, but we didn't get to it?
No, we got to talk about a lot. This is
I
good.
know.
I
I
really
enjoyed
enjoyed it.
myself. I
Me
did too.
too. Me
I mean,
too.
like I said, when I was reading your book, I was like, oh my gosh, look at
I
these
love that. Yeah, that we have
similarities.
so much in common.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
We had that
that was
connection.
really,
We had that
yeah, that was
connection,
really
right?
cool for me.
Yes. Yes. It was cool to learn that.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. I
Thank you so
really
much.
appreciate you being here and, wishing you the best. And I know we're going to shout out your salon. So hopefully you get some more folks
That's
coming
right. That's right. Women
to
Writers in
join.
Bloom Poetry Salon. That's right. Check us out.
Absolutely. And thank you,
Thank you.
JP. Really, really appreciate having you here.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful.
Absolutely. And you have a great evening.
Okay, you too.
All right.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.